July arrives, and most gardeners make the same decision. They look at the calendar, they look at the garden, and they decide it's too late. Too late to plant anything meaningful, too hot to start something new. Whatever didn't get planted in spring is going to wait until next year. That thinking is costing you 20 years. Here is what the calendar doesn't tell you. There is a category of plants that actually prefers July, not in spite of the heat, because of it. Warm soil all the way down. Roots establish in warm soil dramatically faster than in cold soil. And the plants you're about to see don't need months of above-ground growing season. They need to anchor their roots before winter. Then they come back, not just next year, every year, for the next 10, 15, 20 years, as food. Real, harvestable food from one afternoon of planting this July.
I'm covering 8 perennial edibles today. Herbs, vegetables, and one plant most people in the Western world have never heard of that you can plant right now and harvest from for 2 decades. Some you'll recognize. A few will completely change how you think about what a food garden can be. Stay through to plant number 7 because it stops experienced gardeners cold when they encounter it. It produces up to 9 separate edible heads from a single plant, returns every year without replanting, and the overwhelming majority of American gardeners have never once grown it. Leave before we get there and you'll miss the most productive plant on this list. Subscribe before we start. Every single week, this channel puts out honest, research-backed food garden content that tells you not just what to plant, but exactly why and when, down to the variety and the soil condition that makes the difference between a plant that survives and one that feeds you for 20 years. Let's go.
Plant number 1 is mint. And I'm starting here because no plant better illustrates what a perennial edible actually means in practical, everyday terms. A single mint plant put in the ground this July will be in that ground for the rest of your gardening life. Mint spreads by underground runners that push outward season after season without stopping. What starts as one plant becomes a dense, fragrant colony. This is why experienced gardeners grow mint in a sunken container, a large pot buried flush with the soil surface, to contain the runners without restricting the plant. From that single contained planting, the harvest is continuous. Fresh mint for tea through spring and summer, dried mint for winter, mint in cooking, lamb, salads, sauces, dressings, mojitos. Different varieties bring entirely different characters. Spearmint for cooking and tea, peppermint for the most intense fragrance, apple mint for a rounder, softer flavor, chocolate mint for desserts. Plant 2 or 3 varieties in adjacent sunken containers, and you have a kitchen herb garden requiring almost nothing from you for the next 2 decades. Mint also functions as a companion plant, deterring pests from surrounding crops through its volatile oils, dual purpose in the best tradition of the food garden. Zones 3 through 9, full sun to partial shade, any moisture-retentive soil. Golden tip. Sink an old pot or bucket into the ground with just the rim at soil level before planting. This physically contains the runners underground without needing to divide or dig it out every season. Non-negotiable if you don't want mint taking over the entire bed within 2 years.
Plant number 2 is Greek oregano,
Specifically, Oreganum vulgaris subspecies hirtum. Not the common ornamental type widely sold at garden centers that often has little to no culinary flavor. The distinction matters. Greek oregano carries that hot, peppery, deeply aromatic intensity you recognize from Mediterranean cooking. The common variety cannot replicate it. Grow the right one, and you will not buy dried oregano from a jar again. What you dry yourself, harvested just before the flowers open when the oils are most concentrated, is a genuinely different ingredient.
Oregano is a woody perennial, nearly evergreen in mild climates, giving you harvestable growth almost year-round. It wants lean, dry, well-drained soil, and here is the counterintuitive fact. Poor soil produces more intensely flavored leaves than rich ground. Feed it too well, and you dilute the very oils that make it worth growing. In July, small plants go into warm soil and root quickly. By August, you're harvesting. Zones 5 through 10, full sun, poor to average well-drained soil. Trim hard after flowering to keep it bushy. Plant this July, harvest from your kitchen for 20 years at zero ongoing cost. Here's a golden tip. When buying oregano, crush a leaf at the nursery before purchasing. If you don't immediately smell a strong, peppery, almost spicy fragrance, you don't have Greek oregano. Don't plant a herb that won't perform in the kitchen.
Specificity matters here. Plant number 3 is common sage, Salvia officinalis, and it belongs on this list because it is one of the longest-lived culinary herbs you can grow. A well-sited sage plant will still be producing 15, even 20 years after planting. It becomes a proper woody shrub over time. Silver-green leaves year-round in mild climates, tall purple-blue flower spikes in early summer that are edible, beautiful, and irresistible to bees. Fresh sage is deep, warm, and slightly resinous in a way dried sage from a jar never captures. Foundational in Italian cooking, in stuffings, in brown butter sauces. Crispy fried sage leaves in brown butter over good pasta with Parmesan. 3 ingredients, 1 from your garden, free for the next 20 years.
Sage is drought tolerant once established. Plant in July in a sunny, well-drained spot. Water through the first month to anchor the roots. Then largely leave it alone. The older the plant, the more character the leaves carry. Sage genuinely rewards patience. Zones 4 through 8. Full sun, lean, well-drained soil. Golden tip. Never cut sage back into old woody growth. It will not regenerate from bare stems. Each spring, cut only into green growth, removing no more than 1/3 of the plant. This keeps it producing fresh, intensely flavored young leaves rather than becoming a tangle of unproductive bare wood. Plant number 4 is comfrey, the plant most people walk past without knowing what they're looking at. A large, bold, slightly bristly plant that grows with vigorous confidence in any reasonably moist spot. Some people pull it out. Both that and never planting it are mistakes worth correcting. Comfrey is the most multifunctional plant in a food garden. The young leaves harvested in spring are edible cooked, treated like spinach or chard, wilted in butter, added to soups. They carry unusually high protein content for a leafy green. Beyond food, the leaves cut and wilted make one of the most effective homemade fertilizers available. Steep them in water for a few weeks, and you produce comfrey tea, rich in potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen, rivaling any bottle from the garden center at zero cost. Laid on beds as mulch, they break down rapidly, feeding the soil. And the roots go 3 to 5 feet deep into the subsoil, pulling up minerals that nothing at the surface can reach. This is why growers call it a dynamic accumulator. It mines the deep soil and makes those nutrients available at the surface. One clear warning. Once planted, comfrey is permanent. Those roots do not leave willingly. Choose the spot carefully. Zones 3 through 9, full sun to partial shade, deep, reasonably moist soil. Golden tip. Plant the Bocking 14 cultivar specifically. It is a sterile hybrid that does not self-seed, giving you all of comfrey's extraordinary fertility and food benefits without aggressive spread beyond where you intend it. 4 plants down. What comes next shifts this list into something more interesting. Plant 5 gives you 3 completely different harvests from a single 2-foot footprint. Most people only ever use one of them. Plant number 5 is fennel. And fennel earns its place on a 20-year food list because it gives you 3 completely different harvests from one organism. The feathery fronds are a herb, chopped over fish, stirred into salads, scattered across roasted vegetables. The seeds, harvested as the flower heads dry, are a spice, warm, aromatic, essential in sausages, bread, and Italian cooking. And the swollen base on bulbing varieties is a vegetable, sliced raw in salads, roasted until caramelized, braised slowly in olive oil until it collapses into sweetness. 3 harvests, 1 plant, a 2-foot footprint. Fennel is perennial in zones 6 through 10, dying back in cold winters and returning reliably in spring. In colder zones, it performs as a long-season annual and self-seeds prolifically, dropping offspring that continue the supply even when winter is harder than expected. That self-seeding habit is what makes it function as a permanent presence in the garden, even in colder zones. Full sun, well-drained soil. July planting gives fennel exactly what it prefers. It roots fast and establishes before winter arrives. Golden tip. Do not plant fennel near tomatoes, peppers, or most brassicas. It produces compounds that inhibit their growth. Give it its own dedicated area, or pair it with dill, which tolerates it. Excellent placed near a path where brushing the leaves releases fragrance continuously.
Plant number 6 is Alpine Strawberry, and it earns its place through sheer, relentless productivity, combined with a flavor that completely reframes what a strawberry can be. These are not large commercial varieties. Alpine strawberries produce small, intensely aromatic berries from late spring right through to the first hard frosts of autumn. The flavor concentration compared to a supermarket strawberry is so superior that chefs pay serious prices for them at market. Growing your own means that same ingredient from a plant that never stops producing.
Alpine strawberries self-seed rather than producing runners. A single plant drops offspring around the parent that establish the following spring. One plant becomes several become a productive colony that expands naturally and feeds you indefinitely. They handle partial shade better than almost any other fruiting plant, the edible answer for shadier beds where most food plants can't perform. Zones 3 through 10, partial shade to full sun. Any reasonable, well-amended soil. Plant at least 3 to 5 in July to start a productive colony quickly.
Golden tip. Choose the variety Alexandria or Mignonette, proven performers with excellent flavor and strong self-seeding habits. Avoid anything labeled everbearing without checking the species. Many everbearing types are hybrid runner-producing plants, not true alpine self-seeders. 6 plants down. What comes next is the reason I told you to stay at the beginning. Plant number 7 is the one that makes experienced gardeners stop and ask why nobody told them about it sooner. And it is a vegetable, not an herb, that produces more edible heads from a single plant than most people think is possible.
Plant number 7 is 9-star perennial broccoli, and this is the plant that makes experienced gardeners genuinely ask, why did nobody tell me about this sooner? Here is what it does. Every spring, a single established plant produces a large central head surrounded by up to 9 smaller side heads radiating outward. That is where the name comes from. And then, unlike annual broccoli, which you cut, compost, and start over, 9-star keeps growing. You harvest the heads, the plant pushes new side shoots that produce edible greens through the rest of the season. Then it goes into winter, builds root mass through the cold months, and comes back the following spring to do it all again, year after year. A well-established 9-star plant is significantly more productive over its lifetime than replanting annual broccoli every single year, and it requires no replanting whatsoever.
What it does require is good, rich, well-fed soil and a permanent, undisturbed spot. Brassicas are hungry plants, and this one is planning to stay for a long time. Zones 5 through 9. Full sun. Deep, fertile, well-amended soil. Mulch heavily in winter in colder zones. July planting gives the root system the warm soil establishment it needs before winter. Golden tip. 9-star broccoli is not widely stocked at standard garden centers. Source it from specialist seed suppliers. Feed with a high nitrogen fertilizer in early spring as growth resumes to fuel multiple head production, and again after harvesting the main heads to sustain side shoot production through the rest of the season.
Plant number 8 is Turkish rocket, Buneus orientalis, the oldest food plant on this list. Eaten across Central Asia and Eastern Europe for over 2,000 years, a staple from Turkey to Siberia, and almost entirely forgotten in modern Western gardens. That is a significant oversight. The young leaves in spring taste like a mild, nutty rocket with a slight mustard warmth. Outstanding in salads, stir-fries, soups, and raw in sandwiches the way you'd use watercress. As the plant matures, the leaves grow more robust in flavor, better cooked than raw at that stage, but still entirely edible. The plant reaches 3 to 4 feet tall, with bright yellow flowers in early summer that are edible and highly productive for pollinators. It spreads by seed and clump expansion, becoming more productive with each passing season. Every year more established, every year more generous. Zones 3 through 9. Full sun to partial shade. Average to poor soil. Like most wild brassicas, it does not need rich ground. And for a July planting, it is one of the most cooperative plants on this list. It roots quickly in warm soil and returns the following spring with more vigor than it showed in its first year.
Golden tip. Turkish rocket is sourced through specialist perennial vegetable suppliers. It is not a standard garden center plant. Search Turkish rocket Buneus orientalis specifically. Plant where it has room to expand over years, not a tight border where its mature height and clump spread will cause problems. 8 plants, all of them going into warm July soil this weekend if you make the decision to start. Here is how to think about which 3 you choose first. Here is the thing about July planting I want to stay with you after this video ends. Every year, most gardeners write off half the growing season. July arrives and the decision is made. This year's window has closed. Wait until next year. But perennial edibles don't work on that logic. They are building toward next year, and the year after, and the decade after that. The plant you put in the ground this July does not care that it is not May. It cares about warm soil and enough weeks before winter to get its roots down. July gives it exactly that. Pick 3 from today's list. Choose the ones that connect to how your kitchen actually works. The herbs you use every week, the vegetables you buy every season. Plant them this July. Then watch what comes back next spring, already bigger, already moving toward harvest. When those plants push back up through the soil in March or April, you'll understand what it means to have planted something that lasts. Hit the thumbs up if this gave you something you're actually going to use. Subscribe for honest food garden content every single week. And drop a comment. Tell me which month you're watching this in and which of these 8 you're starting with. I read every single one. See you in the next video.